agreeing to do this live.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
As I mentioned to you kind of previously, it's definitely my aim to expose as many aspiring solicitors as possible to as many different areas of law as possible, because obviously we all understand that while studying law at university, law in practice isn't the same. And so the more practice areas that we can kind of speak about and get some answers to questions about, the more people maybe explore their different options. So I appreciate you joining.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind, Nikki, then can you just kind of give us a brief overview of your legal journey to date, and then we'll get into each thing in more detail.
Okay, cool. So maybe I'll start from uni. I feel like that's a sensible place.
Yeah, uni, or whenever you thought law was for you, whenever your experiences with law started.
Okay, cool. So best place to start. Okay, no, I'll start from uni and then maybe backtrack a bit. So university, I went to the University of Nottingham. I initially studied economics, and then that didn't work. So after 2 years of economics, I changed to the law degree. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point during this.
Yeah, definitely.
So I changed to do straight law. I did 3 years of the law degree, and kind of just before that, I'd done a bit of legal work experience because my mum and dad are lawyers, so I'd done stints working for them in their office. But at that time, honestly, I wasn't really thinking about law as being a career for me. It was just something I was doing for money and experience.
Get that extra money in, definitely.
Exactly. And then when I got to uni, obviously I was, struggling with the economics course. And when I was thinking about what I could change to, a lot of my experience kind of aligned with doing law. And I just thought, I'm not good at maths. I'm kind of good at writing, analysis, that kind of thing. So I might as well go into something that suits those skills. So that's why I changed to the law degree. Whilst I was on the law degree, did other bits of legal work experience. So I did an international legal internship, for example. So I got to the end of my law degree. I'd been applying for training contracts unsuccessfully, but slowly kind of getting a bit better. I felt like
the application process.
Yes, exactly. And also I had a lot of help from Rare Recruitment, who I always mention when I talk about my law journey, because they were amazing. And then, I got to the end of my law degree and I ended up getting a training contract with the firm I'm at now, which is Hogan Lovells. So that was right after I graduated. And I obviously did the whole law school thing with them. So I did the 6 months accelerated LPC. And then I had 6 months off and then started my training contract in 2017. And I know that we're going to go into the different seats that I did.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, did the 2 years training contract, qualified in 2019, and then now I'm here. And I'm an associate in the banking, lending and payments team at Hogan Lovells. So that's where I've ended up qualifying. And I've been there as an associate for the last 2 years. So that's kind of my journey.
Yeah. Your journey has been very boom, boom, boom. You've kind of been able to pick up one thing after other, which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's funny that you mentioned, I didn't even know that you did economics and changed to law. I think that's
okay.
Yeah, you did mention. But that's really interesting, because I feel like economics was something I wanted to do, but then I thought maths, no way.
I wish I had that thought at the beginning. Although to be fair, I think doing economics first and then struggling with it the way that I struggled, it kind of made me enjoy law a bit more, because I was studying and studying, so it's never fun, but at least I was doing something that I kind of understood a bit more. So It was helpful to do something that I was absolutely terrible at, so that I could see the difference. But I initially went in studying straight economics, and I hadn't done A-level math. I don't even know what I was thinking. I wanted to be a banker, so I was just thinking economics.
You were always down the finance route, right?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously just wanted to make money as well. So it just seemed logical. And then when I got into the course, I was like, I don't belong here. So I didn't want to drop out of uni, because I was there at a time when they were doing the transition from 3K to 9K for the uni. So it made sense for me to just stick it out, and then transfer rather than leaving and coming back. So I did that. It made sense. So
I guess you kind of obviously mentioned how it helped in kind of making you more comfortable with law, obviously having gone from economics, which was harder. But I guess it's also kind of good that you had that financial backing and understanding before you went into law, especially because you decided to go into corporate commercial law, where it is very finance and business and economy heavy, right? Do you feel like your knowledge in economics kind of helped your degree in that way?
Yeah, knowledge in economics. I think it helped in terms of the interview process. So, you have to talk a lot about your motivations for going into commercial law. And, when you're talking about a specific firm, it's helpful to have something to say, you know, I've studied this and this is why I'm interested in you guys, because you guys are really big on finance, for example. If I can be honest, I don't think that there's anything I learned in economics that's been like hugely helpful in my day to day, but I think that's just because, as you mentioned at the beginning, the nature of legal work in practice is often quite different from what you would have done at uni anyway. So even if I completed the economics degree, done a conversion, I still don't think I would be using loads of my economics degree in my day-to-day work. But it's helpful to have something that you can talk about in interviews. So yeah, and I didn't spend loads of time talking about economics in my interview. It's more kind of like, why did you change? And how did you find it? But yeah, other than that, I wouldn't say that it's been like a huge help, but it's good to have something to talk about. So yeah, in that sense, I think it was.
Makes sense. I feel like whenever you do anything different or slightly different on your CV, they always want to pick up why.
Yeah.
So even before I decided on becoming a solicitor, I was like, oh, barrister route sounds nice. Like, you know, advocacy in court. And for a while, every time I went into an interview, I was like, okay, so why did you do mini pupilages if you wanted to be a solicitor? Like, explain that. And I think there's nothing wrong with exploring your options or maybe taking a different route, as long as you're able to kind of speak through and talk through why it is you made those decisions in the first place. So I think that's a really good point.
Agreed.
Okay, great. So we're in law now. We're doing law. How did you find applying to law firms? Because obviously, as you kind of indicated, you kind of got your training contract soon after finishing university. So I'm assuming you did some things during uni that kind of helped that process.
Yeah, I found it okay. I think when I was doing it without help, my applications were probably rubbish because you don't really know what you're supposed to be saying. I think that your first kind of few attempts at doing a training contract application are always going to be a bit crap unless you know what you're doing from the beginning, in which case, so the help and guidance from Rare and, you know, other people that I would like run ideas by and get them to check my applications was obviously very useful. I think it definitely did help to have things that I'd done at university that I could use to show, you know, entrepreneurial skill, interested in commercial aspects of, you know, the world. In addition to obviously your academics, which you're always going to have if you go to uni and you complete your course. So I was ACS president when I was at uni, and you know, at the time everyone's like, "Oh, ACS is a waste of time." But to be honest, I did
events manager. I feel like we get sucked into it.
It's very useful. I mean, it doesn't just have to be ACS, obviously, but I think anything that just shows, you know, you can work in a team, you can be a leader, is going to be helpful when you're applying for these kinds of firms, because essentially a lot of your role requires you to have those skills. So those kind of things were helpful. And then obviously having legal work experience helped as well. They asked me, actually, because I hadn't done any vacation schemes, so I think that was one thing, I guess, that made me slightly different from some of the other people that I ended up qualifying with. Because I was the only, actually no, that's a lie. There were two of us that didn't do a vacation scheme, and we just went straight for the training contract route.
Direct training contract route, okay.
Yeah, but that definitely came up in at least my interview for my firm that I'm with now, because they were like, you know, you haven't done a vac scheme whilst you were at uni. Isn't this a bit of a shot in the dark for you? So I had to use the other legal experience that I had to kind of make up. I wouldn't call it a gap, but just to explain that, look, you know, I've done some international legal work experience at, like, you know, a huge organization. I've done work experience at smaller commercial law firms, so I haven't done a vac scheme at this type
per se,
but I've got enough work experience to combine. So that really helped. And then I guess just like doing my research on the firm, so that, you know, once you send them an application or you get in front of them in an interview, they can see that you know what you're talking about, you haven't just blindly applied, and that you're actually interested in them as well. So I used a lot of my kind of second chance at a degree to just try and work out like what these firms were like. So yeah, that was, I think, more or less everything that I did whilst I was at uni to give me a good enough application to then apply it and then be successful. So
perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go into a couple of those things, or reiterate a couple of things.
Sure.
So obviously you spoke about, you know, focusing on grades, and obviously you have the grades. That is definitely, I feel like, important in application form. And, you know, not getting the best grades is not the be all and end all, but I'm definitely an advocate for the fact that if you get good grades, it does ease the burden when it comes to applying for law firms, because my first and second year grades, they weren't cutting it. So I feel like it made the process more difficult for me. So that's something to note. Then obviously you mentioned having work experience, both legal and non-legal. So getting involved in university societies, just doing things that allow you to demonstrate the type of skills that these law firms are looking for. Because I think everyone knows that, you know, as a lawyer, it's good to have communication skills and attention to detail, etc., etc. But with every law firm, they will indicate certain skills in particular that they look for. So whether that's technical skills, whether that's critical thinking, and if you have experiences where you've demonstrated those, then they will help you in the application process. So yeah, just wanted to
thank you for touching on the non-legal work experience, actually, because I don't know why I forgot that, but I did have, you know, working in retail. I did Topshop and Victoria's Secret. Those were like my main retail jobs, and I also talked about those a fair bit in my interviews, my applications, because, like you say, it is still relevant even though it's not legal. So yeah,
absolutely
allowed, but
absolutely. Legal work experience, like you said, it's good to kind of do it because then you kind of know what a legal environment is like, and you can demonstrate your passion for law. But the point of any work experience is then being able to understand what transferable skills you've gained that you can now use in your role as a trainee. So as long as you kind of get comfortable identifying the transferable skills, then yeah, it's great. I think with that in mind, then, would you say that you went through a direct training contract route as opposed to maybe applying for a vacation scheme because you had so much previous experience, or what was the thought process?
Yeah, it was kind of that, and also partly what you mentioned before about grades, because at that point,
nice.
I'd done a bit of a degree that didn't go well at all. My first year of law, I got a 2.2, which is obviously not bad.
Same.
For commercial law, you need to be aiming for a 2.1 and above. At that point, I was just like, because of the way that the vacation scheme application windows were set up, they were always around the same time as like revision periods for exams.
Yeah.
Make a decision of like, do I actually need to spend time doing VAC scheme applications when I could be bulking up my revision when I already have a decent bit of legal work experience, or should I just focus on getting my head down, like trying to get a 2.1 and making sure that that's covered? Because like you say, you have to kind of balance it out. Like you can have all of the experience you want, but grades are still really important in commercial law, to be in lots of industries, but specifically in commercial law. So yeah, I guess balanced it out, and I was like, I think I can get away with not doing a VAC scheme, and I can explain that if I need to explain
why exactly.
But I just really wanted to get the right grade so that wouldn't be a reason for them to say, oh well, we're not sure about her. So got my head down and did that. I graduated with a 2.1, so it's not like I got a first, but I got enough to like get me in. So yeah, no, because I didn't want to give that whole introduction and be like, oh, first class. It was still hard, but yeah, so that was my reason for not going for the VAC scheme. And then I also think the thing about vacation schemes, it's not just about, you know, having legal experience on your CV, but also you get to meet these firms, you find out what they're like, you find out what the culture is like. And I was like, you just need to research so that you can kind of try and make up for the information lost because
that you would have got if you were actually on the scheme.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the things I had to think about, and it wasn't just to like, oh, no time for a VAC scheme. There's a lot that comes into play, and when people ask like, do you think I should do a VAC scheme, I'm always like, it just depends on what your CV currently looks like.
100%. 100%. I completely agree, and I think it's such an important point that I didn't ever put together until now, because obviously most firms will have maybe up to 3 intakes for VAC schemes. So they'll have winter, spring and summer. And like you said, if you're studying, your winter VAC scheme, your application and then the actual scheme is during your revision or exam period. And then the same thing for spring. And then it's normally only summer where you have a bit of leg room after exams to kind of get them in before the deadline. So I think that's a really important point. And as I say, when people ask me what should they be doing during university, I think do as much as you can comfortably do. You don't want to take on too many things and then you're not really excelling in the areas that you want to because you're kind of pulled in every angle. So I think training contracts are not always going to be there, but they're always going to be there. Whereas you have one shot with an exam or one shot with your course. So just do that. And then if you have time, apply. If not, just wait until you've done everything you can do for now. So yeah, agreed. Okay, perfect. So with the work experience that you did get, legal work experience that you did get, that maybe you didn't get with your parents, what tips would you have for any aspirants that are trying to get work experience at the moment?
I know it's a lot harder now because obviously the outside environment has changed a lot, and it's also been a long time since I did that legal work. Even because the place that I did it at, it was the OPEC Fund for International Development, so like a large kind of like multinational government organization, and it was in Austria, which is where the kind of experience was. But their application process changed so much since I did it, so there's that. But I think it's important to obviously just try and like get whatever type of legal work experience that you can. And so that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, like a VAC scheme. There are different types of not VAC scheme level, but legal work experience.
Yeah, like high streets or
exactly, like high street firms that seem to always be looking for people to help out. Because I know that people want to get good quality legal work experience as well, because, you know, you want to be able to go to a firm and say, I've done an internship at a firm that's similar to this. But obviously just don't underestimate the skills that you can get from other types of legal work experience. And obviously it depends on the time that you've got as well, because you're at uni or doing other things. But if you get opportunities, just like no matter how big or small, do them, because like we said before, you can get relevant skills from non-legal jobs. So, you know, how much more when you actually go to a law firm, even if it's a small one, for example. And then also just like taking into account the current climate, there are lots of virtual schemes that I know firms are running now. I say I know they're running them. I wouldn't be able. I'm sure that you'd have more up-to-date knowledge about, you know, specifics, but I think you can take advantage of those as well, because it's not looked down on, especially with firms looking at applications now. They understand that the kind of
it's a pandemic, like
exactly. So not to be worried too much if you're not kind of like getting opportunities that you think that you should be. Anything that you can do that can give you the relevant skills is useful. So that's kind of, I guess, what I would say.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but I know it's so much harder. So I feel like I don't know, I feel like it's just easy for me to say because I'm here and I'm like, oh yeah, just try really hard to get everything that you can. But yeah, I know it's a struggle, but I think just trying to make sure that you're taking the right approach to the kind of opportunities that are there is important, and not, you know, knocking out something that you don't think is good enough, basically, because you'll be surprised at what skills you can get from those. So yeah, absolutely.
I think 2 people in the comments just mentioned FRU and CAB, so the Citizens Advice Bureau, and the Free Representation Unit. I'm sure that's the acronym, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, they're 2 good organizations that you can do work experience with. That's physical work experience. And as you mentioned, because of the pandemic, a lot of law firms have provided virtual internships. And there's a website called The Forage. So if you just go on Google, type in The Forage, and many law firms have virtual work experience that take maybe 4, 5, 6 hours to do. But then at the end, you get a certificate, you can put it on your LinkedIn, you can put it on your CV, and you can mention it in your application form. So there's always, you know, something. So yeah, hopefully you're not at too much of a disadvantage. But yeah, I think it's harder now because a lot of firms have become more rigid with their work experience. So maybe before they would offer like a week here or a week there to anyone who emails in and submits a CV, whereas now it's like we have fixed work experience on these dates. And it's just like, yo.
It's really hard. And to be honest, even like I'm still in contact with my secondary school, and they always ask me about work experience for, you know, the A-level students. And it feels horrible to say we actually don't offer just, you know, you guys come in for a week. It's always through recruitment or aspiring solicitors. So I always tell people to just attach themselves to those organizations as well, because they can often bring you through to different firms, to their various formal schemes that you can't access when you just email them. So I would say keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely. Aspiring solicitors is really, really good if you're looking for like law firm events and open days, because a lot of law firms partner with aspiring solicitors. So I think I went to about 5, 6 open days through my membership of aspiring solicitors. So they're good. And then Rare Recruitment are good for like application reviews and things of that nature as well. So good. Okay. So we finished university now. How did you find the accelerated LPC? I feel like that is intense.
To be honest, like I don't have anything to compare it to in terms of like the standard LPC was obviously a year long,
12 months.
And I know that there's a 2-year long version, but 6 months just felt normal because it was like, well, that's just,
everyone in your course is doing it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Fair enough.
I think it was strange in the sense that, for example, they told us like not to take notes in lectures. So they gave us like pre-written lecture notes, and you're supposed to read it beforehand and then just go there and listen. And that's not the way that I digest information. So I was a bit like, okay. But the whole thing was just something that happened. Like, I think it was, you know, it's studying. So it's never like, oh, this is so much fun. And there were bits of it that were like, okay, this is kind of stressful. But after the 6 months, I was finished, and then that's it.
Boom. On to the next.
I can barely remember the struggle of it, because it's like I'd just come out of uni. That was stressful. More work, more studying, stressful. You know, I can't say anything profound.
It's not like you had downtime and it was like full force. It was like you were kind of Yeah.
Just
third year would have been intense. It was intense, and then you just go into training contract.
Yeah, exactly. Something that, but I mean, I've got no
Okay, cool. So how was your training contract like? So what training contract seats did you do? And then just a really brief overview of the type of work you do as a trainee in each of those areas.
Yeah, so every time I answer this, I'm older and I'm like further away from when I did it. So it just hits me that it was so long ago. But yes, I started my training contract in 2017.
Yeah.
My first seat was data protection. And at the time, I didn't even know that we had a data protection team in the firm. So I was like, what is going on? But I had a really, really good time there. A good time, it sounds like an exaggeration, but I found the work really interesting. I was there just before the GDPR came into force, so we were like really popular in the firm at the time, so just getting lots of interesting work. It's a team that's in the kind of regulatory practice in the firm, so it's just because essentially our clients sit in an industry that's very heavily regulated, as opposed to just having legislation to think about. You've also got a regulator, the ICO, so doing lots of reg work, advisory work, advice notes, doing calls with clients to give them advice on the phone. There were lots of different aspects of giving that advice. So I found that quite fun. And obviously it's quite research heavy because it's advisory. So that was a really good one for my first seat. Then I moved on to the banking, well, it's now called the banking, lending and payments team, which is where I've now qualified. So again, it was also in the global regulatory practice. So heavily regulated sector. It's all about consumer finance, banking, lending, savings, that kind of thing. So it was a similar work type, but just a different industry and a different type of client. So I already felt like I had like a good level of experience of the types of work that I was doing. It was helpful that I'd done data protection because there are quite close links between financial services and data protection issues. So I actually ended up on a really big GDPR project as soon as I got into the financial services team. So I was actually kind of useful, which is weird as a you won't be useful.
You're like, I know what I'm doing.
And I had knowledge that people would actually kind of come and ask me stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So that was my second seat. I got on really well with the people in that team. I mean, I got on well with everybody, to be fair, but I connected quite well with the people in that team. Then my next seat was a secondment to Lloyds Banking Group. So I was in their consumer finance team. So there's now like a pattern forming because I'm doing my second consumer finance related seat.
Very finance and regulation heavy.
Exactly. The secondment was really good as a learning experience. Obviously at that point I was in my third seat. I would say that it was very intense just because you're obviously moving from the firm that you've kind of gotten used to over the last year, and now you're working in-house. They don't have the same sense of hierarchy that there is in law firms. So it's not like, oh, she's a trainee, so she's not going to know this or that. It was like, Nikki from the legal team is here. She can answer your question. But I was like, okay,
let's go.
This is what we're doing. So it was definitely, I felt like I was thrown into the deep end a lot. And I honestly say, like, it wasn't until maybe 4 months in that I felt like I know what I'm doing. Felt very comfortable, and then obviously 6 months came and it was over.
You're out again.
But yeah, exactly, I was gone. But that was helpful for like building a commercial relationship with the client, and just understanding how the client works internally. So things that I would obviously end up working on when I qualified, just having an understanding of how those firms work and their governance structure. It helps you when you're giving them legal advice because you know what route that advice has to take to
it means you can really tailor the advice you're giving because you know what they're going to do with that information, so you know how they need to receive it.
Exactly. And you just kind of like understand the kind of commercial circumstance that they operate in as well, which is always useful. So that was my third seat, and then my final seat was financial services litigation. So more financial services.
It was all finance, wasn't it? All finance.
When I got to the end of my training contract and we were doing all of the applications for qualification, people were like, oh yeah, Nikki tailored her whole training contract to be in banking, lending and payments. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's what I did, but that's how it ended up because it was just what I was interested in. I knew that I didn't want to do litigation long term. I knew I didn't want to qualify into a litigation seat, but I had to do one because that's what my
part of the FIA requirements.
So I'm like, if I'm going to do one, let me do it in something that's going to at least help me when I qualify where I want
with your finance.
Exactly. So I did financial services litigation, ended up being really good. I was just working for a long time on a trial, like a high court trial So just assisting with that, and it was quite juicy, like the subject matter. So it was actually kind of fun, and it was also helpful because I was interested in qualifying in the financial services regulation team, which is where I am now. And we work quite closely with the litigation team because obviously the next step on from not doing it right when it comes to regulation is sometimes litigation.
Yeah, we need to go to court. Yeah, we need to figure this out.
Exactly. So it was helpful to have that experience. But yeah, lots of just like court work and litigation strategy, that kind of thing. So it was interesting. And then I qualified. So I qualified into the banking, lending and payments team. I always pause because we change our name a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I qualified after the 2 years and have been there since. So that was my kind of training contract journey.
Yeah, I have never met anyone whose training contract is so centered around one type of...
Yeah, it was quite linear. I think if at some point I thought that it wasn't for me, I would have been a bit stuck because it's like, after the first seat is when you decide you have to submit your request for your next 3 seats. Yeah. So that's the point where you kind of know what you're doing, at least at my firm anyway. So I was glad that I made the right decision because I feel happy with the team that I'm in. But if I hadn't, it would have been like, well, you've got 3 seats worth of this, so you're just going to have to enjoy it. So
was there any flexibility then? Because if you have to decide your next 3 seats, could you have changed your mind, or was it quite brutal?
Yeah, you can change your mind if there's, a good reason to be like, actually, no, none of this is for me. They still have to accommodate other people who've made their decisions and have stuck with them. So it's not like you can just get whatever you want. But they try and like accommodate your needs and they try and make sure you're happy. So I'm sure if I'd said, actually, I don't want to do financial services litigation, they might have tried to find a place for me somewhere else. But
who knows? So was all of the seats that you did seats that you chose, or was there any of them compulsory? Because I remember you said you didn't really know much about data protection.
Yeah, so data protection was the one that I would say I didn't choose. I didn't even put it down on my list of options, to be honest. I wanted to do IP, and at that time, data protection and IP at my firm were kind of like merged under the same.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought I was going to IP, and then I found out it was data. But we have to do a finance, a corporate, and a litigation seat. So obviously, my litigation seat was the
last one, the 4th.
Weirdly enough, my corporate seat was my second seat because at the time, again, just weird stuff about how the different practice areas were structured.
Our groups and shit,
we were part of what was then the corporate practice, even though we're actually not a corporate lending team of any kind. So I managed to tip off my corporate seat by sitting there. And then my finance seat was my secondment. So I was actually doing 3 different ways of approaching the same thing, but it ends up falling into 3 different categories. So so we're required to do a corporate, a finance, and a litigation seat, and then the last one is just kind of, I guess, wherever you want,
wherever you end up.
But
Okay, perfect. Well, why did you, because they were all kind of finance, regulation, advisory based, except for litigation, obviously, why did you decide on the banking, lending and payments team? Why that one as opposed to the rest?
Yeah, good question. I think so. I already knew that I was interested in the work types that were associated with regulation. I think it really came down a lot to the people, to be honest, because when I left,
often the case.
I left the data protection team and I was like, I love it. Like the work's so cool. I was like, I'm going to qualify there. Like no ifs or buts. And then when I joined the second team, and I also really like the people in the data protection team. When I joined the second team, there was just something different about the way that I got on with the people in that team. And in particular, when I left, they were making a lot of an effort to stay in contact with me as well. So I was on secondment, obviously, to a client, so that's part of the reason. But they would include me in like, Christmas dinners and just check up on me. Like I think when I was on secondment, they took me out to lunch once, but just reminding me that they were still
that you're still part of the team, even though you're not in the firm.
So I was like, okay, so I had the most contact with them after I left, and I think since having qualified in the team, I understand, because we all get on so well. So when we have a trainee that we, really like, we actually make an effort to stay in contact with them and let them know we want you to join. And I think that's a really good thing. So they were nice to meet. I liked them. I liked the work. I was always interested in banking, finance, that kind of thing, obviously way back when I was thinking about being a banker. So it all just kind of aligned, I think. And I'm quite a bit of a people person. So I think that's what swayed it. And I got lucky because nobody else in my intake applied for that team. So
there you go. It was meant to happen.
And to be fair, I didn't know at the time, but once the the stats came out about who was applying for what, it turned out I was the only one that was applying. So I was like, well, that's it. Yeah. So.
Nice. Okay. So obviously we know generally that, you advise businesses on different regulations, but what would you say you do on a day-to-day in terms of like practically? Are you sending emails? Are you drafting letters? Are you drafting contracts? What are you doing on day-to-day?
Yeah. I find it difficult to answer this question without making the job sound boring. But yeah, as you say, it's different aspects of giving clients legal advice, regulatory advice. So that can take lots of different forms. It can be in the form of an advice note where they've asked a specific question and it's almost like an essay that you draft to answer it. They might ask for training on something that they might already know about, refresher on, or if there's a new piece of legislation coming in and they want to know more about what the impact of that would be on their business, we can do training on that, presentations. Some of it is project work, so they might want us to do a review on all aspects of their consumer finance business, for example, and we would look at everything, their processes, the letters they send, the way they communicate with customers, and then give them, I guess, like a rating of the different areas of their business based on our analysis, which is always kind of cool. There is drafting work as well, so not just drafting advice notes like I mentioned, but drafting terms and conditions. And I always say, like, we draft terms and conditions that people don't read, but things like, consumer credit.
You still need to have it there,
You need to have it, yeah. So, like mortgage documentation or standard loans, for example, like we would draft that kind of wording. So there's lots of different work types and, opportunities to, I guess, do like public speaking, do research, do drafting. There's a bit of transactional work as well. So if we have, a big client who is investing in a financial services startup, then they would obviously need, from a, I guess, due diligence point of view, people who are experts in that area to look at the business and be like, do we think they're doing things properly? Is this a sound investment? We wouldn't actually make that decision, but we would tell them,
advise them,
from like a legal and reg perspective, this is where we think that company stands. So we do support with transaction work, but we're not just there to be like corporate support team. We have our own work that comes in and we do that, and we also do corporate support work. So yeah, that's kind of everything that I do. So on a day-to-day, it's just progressing those different pieces of work. So whether it's like jumping on a call, like internal or external with a client, doing research to, advance an advice note, drafting slides for a presentation, it will be different aspects of progressing those.
Depending on what their needs are and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, great. Would you say that you work with other departments? Because obviously, as you said, like with more banking, transactional work, they do a lot of support work for corporate and stuff like that. As your team as it is, do you do a lot of work with other departments, or are you kind of more standalone?
Yes, we do a lot of cross-department work. It happens often because we'll be working on things that impact us, and then there might be, I don't know, something that relates to insolvency, for example, and it might not be, let's all get together and have a huge meeting about this, but it could be as simple as, let's just run this by a partner or an associate in that team to make sure that we're not missing anything major. But they do try and encourage a lot of kind of cross-team work because, you can obviously, you can cross-sell, so you can offer services of other teams as well. So it's good to try and get them introduced to clients if possible. We probably work, obviously, most closely, like I mentioned, with the litigation team. But we also have a sister team, for example, to do investments and markets work. And often clients will have projects which involve both of our teams. So yeah, we work across those. And also we kind of work across offices as well globally. So a lot of our clients have businesses which are based not just in the UK, but all over the world. And sometimes the advice that they need has an international aspect to it. So we'll have to then pull in our sister teams in different offices and get them involved, which is always very fun. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to work with different teams in the firm and also just different offices around the world. So I think that's quite a nice aspect of the work that I do. So yeah.
Good. No, I think that's good that you kind of mention it, went into detail about each of those points, because even before you get into a law firm, when you're doing the application stage and you have a case study or you're in an interview, cross-selling is important in law firms because law firms are businesses, and whilst a client may come to you for, a banking need, they actually may later on down the line might need some restructuring. So your R&I team may be involved in that, or they may decide they want to buy another company. So your corporate team would be involved in that. And the more you kind of introduce your different teams and your expertise in other areas, the more the client uses your different services and the more money the firm makes. So that's just a random point I thought, let me just add, because if anyone has any case studies coming up, it's important.
Yeah, so it's helpful to know, and to be honest, it's always a good point to mention, you know, the whole cross-selling thing, because like you say, law firms are businesses at the end of the day. So if there's opportunities for extra work that we can get with the clients that we have already, then we will take those. So that's definitely a good point to mention in interviews, and like you say, when you're doing case studies, because it's just a bit like, okay, they understand how law firms run a business. Yeah.
Absolutely, because that tripped me up. I think I had one with one law firm, and the person came in about a personal injury issue, and during their summary of the events, they're like, yeah, I'm going through a divorce with my wife. And so when I got the feedback, they're like, they're going through a divorce, but you didn't mention our family law practice. And I'm like,
yeah.
So yeah, guys, don't get tricked up. Okay, great. So that's the type of work that you do. I think because your journey has been, you've had so much different parts of your journeys, you know, changing from non-law to law, and then your legal work experience, uni, etc. What advice would you give generally to aspiring solicitors, regardless like of what stage they're in?
What advice would I give them? It's like there's so many things I can give.
Literally, so whatever field you pick is good.
I think that, I guess you mentioned all of the different things that I have done to end up at this point. I would say, like, don't underestimate what you can take from every single experience you have along the way before you become a solicitor. And I think sometimes people even miss out on applications, things that they've done, because they don't think that it would be relevant.
It's relevant.
But all of that is relevant. I mean, not to say that you should have some like super long cover letter or whatever it is that they accept these days with like mentioning all sorts of random stuff, but I really think people should look at everything that they've done and try and draw out what they think would be the relevant transferable skills that they've got from all of that, and how that places you to become a solicitor, because people are often like, oh, I don't have any experience in this or that, and they haven't actually looked back at what they've done and how many skills they would have picked up from those things. So even if it's a case of just like going through, you know, you can look up online what are the skills needed to be a solicitor, look at those skills and be like, what jobs have I done or what work have I done that aligns with those. So yeah, really just like give credit to the stuff that you've done already. Obviously it's good to acknowledge where you have gaps and where you need to fill those, but I really think people underestimate the value of the experience they've already got. And the other tip that I would give is just research on different firms and what they are like, because I think a mistake that I probably made at the beginning was that I was of the opinion that any law firm that will hire me, I will go there, because like I want to be a lawyer. They're all the same in the sense of like the types of clients. Salary's good, that's cool, like sign me up. I think the more that I was researching the different firms and like actually trying to learn about the culture and the kind of people that they have there, I was like, okay, there are some firms I definitely don't think I would be happy at. So it's good to really like know what firms you think are right for you, and not just like I'll go anywhere. And that just takes, you know, research and spending time speaking to them and visiting them, like we said. So it's not just about who would hire you, it's like, do you actually think you'd be happy there? I think that's a big thing to focus on when you're doing your applications and doing your research on firms.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to go to the questions that have come in. So because you've obviously emphasized the importance of research, is there any particular platforms or any particular things that you think they should be researching, or where they should be researching in order to make the application the best that they can?
Yeah, I would say, again, I mean, my knowledge on this is going to be so out of date, but I definitely think the key is to like diversify your sources of information about firms. So everybody knows not just the website, so I don't actually need to say that, even though I did just say it, but not just the website, places like Lawyer to Be, Chambers Student Guide. There was Lex 100 when I was doing my for the thing, Day in the Life of a Trainee, that was really helpful. Also like Legal Week, Legal Cheek, even Roll on Fridays, those were helpful for like the low down, because I think especially when it comes to understanding like culture, and sometimes you need to get a sense of the scandals and stuff, you know, to like really know what you're walking into
and how they handle it, more importantly. Right?
Exactly. So all of those kinds of sources, in addition to what you would learn from them online, and then, like I keep on saying, just going and talking to them, asking people like, what's your day-to-day working life like? How do you find the culture? What made you like join? What made you stay? Those kind of things. So like asking people what their actual experience is like at the firm. should form a big part of your research. And if it's as a case of having to like have a document where you have a list of all the firms you're interested in and every single bit of information you collect about any of those firms, just add it to your bank.
Yeah.
And when it comes to applications, you'll have lots of things to say, lots of things to talk about, or even just to refer back to without having to explicitly mention it. So yeah, just diversify sources of information as much as possible, and speak to people in person, like just try and meet them. And it doesn't obviously have to be going to the firm, because that's not always easy. Like you can't just walk in and say, hey, like, can I chat to people?
I'm here, yeah.
A lot of them will be at your uni campuses, for example. So if you know that a firm that you're even a little bit interested in is doing an event on your campus, just go and speak to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just use those opportunities as well. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like open days, law fairs, virtual events, literally. Even if you say, for example, when I was really passionate about restructuring insolvency, I decided to go on LinkedIn, find someone who works in restructuring insolvency at the firm that I wanted to work at, and I messaged them and asked them to kind of explain the type of work that they do and how they find their data. Like you said, connecting with people on LinkedIn is something that I feel like a lot of us don't do, either because, you know, we're scared and, you know, you don't really want to reach out to people you don't know, you fear rejection. But I think personal conversations with people really does differentiate the type of information you gather as opposed to someone who just read a blurb on their website, right? So yeah, I think that's important.
Agreed. I feel bad agreeing with that, because I really I've made a conscious decision to just avoid LinkedIn, because I can't take it. I really can't take it. But if people, no, it's fine, because it is very useful, and I know it works for a lot of people, but I can't, it stresses me out so much.
No, and I get that.
If people connect with me elsewhere, anywhere but LinkedIn, I am very responsive. So that's my way of making for that, because I can't handle LinkedIn. But I do agree it's really useful, and a lot of people use it a lot. So keep that open as an option, because I know lots of people do reply on LinkedIn. I'm just not one.
Yeah, they do. And also just don't be discouraged if people don't. Like, people's day-to-day can be really busy. They can see it, mean to respond, and then forget. So if someone doesn't respond, I would give it a week or so and I'd email someone else. Like, don't let it knock you down. Sometimes people are just so busy, they just forget. So let's try not to be too negative about it. Okay, great. So let's go to questions. There are many. So I'm going to try and cover the things that maybe we haven't spoken about. So give me a second.
Sure.
Okay, diversity question. This is a good one. Did you feel like you had any setbacks being a Black woman in the law community?
I want to say no, but obviously I'm not going to say no without giving context.
Sure.
Because there are obviously going to be barriers that are completely invisible to me. So, you know, there might be jobs that I didn't get, or opportunities that I didn't get by reason of the fact that I'm a Black woman that I'm not going to know about, because that's just the way.
You just didn't get it yet. Yeah,
exactly. But I think that since joining the firm that I'm at, even though like on diversity, same as almost every law firm in the profession, we're not where we want to be, I never felt like anything that I can pinpoint had happened where I was like, okay, that is because I'm a Black woman and that's why I didn't get that opportunity, or that's why I've been made to feel uncomfortable in this situation, for example. But that's, I think, also partly because of the culture of the firm, because everyone's just like really friendly, really easy to get on with. It doesn't erase any of the issues with like lack of diversity, for example, but it just meant that despite the fact that there weren't that many people around that looked like me, I didn't feel othered,
isolated or alone.
I still felt somewhat included. And I'm a part of the race and ethnicity network at my firm, so you know we're doing things to improve it. But yeah, I wouldn't say that like I faced any like notable hardships with it, and I'm not saying that because other people might not have had the same experience as me, and I acknowledge that, but at least for me, I've had like a very positive experience.
Okay.
Despite the fact that obviously, you know, diversity is amazing.
So,
I feel like it's important to say that as well, because sometimes people expect me to say that I've faced all of these barriers and issues and, you know, microaggressions and stuff like that on a day-to-day, but honestly, nothing. I've had a really, really positive experience, at least from that side of things. So yeah, it's not the same for everybody, but at least for me, no real issues. So I don't have the exciting answer that everyone wants.
Okay, another question is, so which university did we both graduate from, and do we feel like the university that you go to has an impact on you going to a good law firm? I actually like that question.
Yeah, good question. So I graduated from the University of Nottingham. sorry, what was the second bit? Do you think that the uni that you go to has an impact on
you going to a good law firm? So like, do you think law firms look at university and be like, oh no, they didn't go to a good enough university for us?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously, they probably don't say it in those terms, but I think indirectly and maybe sometimes unintentionally, the way that they are set up, for example, to focus on particular unis when they're even visiting campuses. I know I mentioned before, you know, oh, lots of firms will come to your campus, but I know that's what uni you go to. So definitely a lot of firms still do have the view that if you didn't go to a certain type of university, then you might not be an ideal candidate. Having said that, I know a lot of firms are also working towards social mobility a lot more than they used to. So they are kind of broadening the list of universities that they accept candidates from, that they seek out. Sometimes, you know, when you have people looking at CVs and applications, there's only so much you can do to stop people applying those biases based on where people have studied. So I definitely think that going to what seems to be a good university has been helpful. But having said that, I know countless people, I met a lot of people during the time that I was on Clubhouse and doing all sorts of like different types of legal diversity talks. I've met so many people who have not gone to your kind of like conventional Russell group or whatever, and really, really excelled in the law. And it's not just like, oh, a handful, it's like a good amount of people to be able to say, okay, there are definitely firms who are taking a different approach to how they recruit people from universities, but I know it's still an issue, so it's not like it's gone away and it's not a completely level playing field. It is changing, so it has an impact, but I think it's just how you navigate as well. And another thing to mention is that it's really good to look at the profiles of people at different firms that you're interested in. So if you can see very clearly that a firm has a very strong preference for Oxbridge, not that there's anything wrong with that for the Oxbridge people, but you know, that it's good to pay attention to the kinds of people that firms recruit, because if there's obvious patterns there, then sometimes it might just be worth knocking that firm off your list and focusing on firms that are a bit more diverse,
accommodating to what your situation.
So that's my piece on that. And
no, I completely agree. So you went to University of Nottingham, I went to University of Leicester. So they're both not Russell Group, right?
I think Nottingham is.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, Leicester definitely
isn't. Not anymore?
I don't know. Okay, well, Leicester isn't a Russell Group. Okay. And I'm about to start a Magic Circle firm. I would say generally, like you said, there's always going to be biases, right? You're always going to have people that will prefer one university over another. However, I think that with application forms, more and more law firms are looking at things a bit more holistically than maybe they used to. So even if you didn't go to Russell University, but you got your good 2-1, then they're like, okay, cool, let's move on to the next. Let's look at your experience. Let's look at how you answer the application questions. I wouldn't put down the experience in university that you've gone to. I would focus more on what you can do with the opportunities and where you are. Don't worry about it. It's good to go to a good university, but I wouldn't say that you can't get to a good law firm if you didn't go to like the Russell Groups or the Oxbridges of this world. Just focus on what you can do, like the experience you can gain and the grades you can gain while you're there. Okay, I've got another question. So, Nikki, do you see yourself becoming a partner eventually, or do you think you could go in-house at some point in your career?
God.
That is a question.
Do you know what? The only reason I'm laughing is because it's like, how do I answer this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm trying to talk down any particular route in law? I think that, okay, so with the partner question, the type of person that I am, I'm very much like, I probably have a plan for what I want to do in the next like 3 to 5 months, but I'm definitely not a like long
5 to 10 years. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the excuse that I use. But no, in all honesty, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I'm dying to be a partner and that's why I'm doing X, Y, Z. Like I want to do well in work on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but I'm not really like partner is in my sights. And I think that in law firms in general, at least now, a lot of the kind of the move towards partnership is not quite like written in the way that it used to be, in the sense that why wouldn't you want to be a partner? I think people are looking at different routes of being successful in law. And for example, in my team, we have somebody who is very senior, who's been at the firm probably almost as long as I've been alive, but like very, very, very well respected, decided not to be a partner for whatever personal reasons, and hasn't suffered from that in any way. So it's not like, oh, well, they're not a partner, so, you know, not going to them for anything. So yeah, it's been helpful to see other people at the firm who have been successful without choosing the route to partnership. It's just not something that I can really see myself saying. But if it happens, then no one should come and be like, "Oh, you didn't want this."
You said you didn't want to do it, yeah.
Yeah, things happen, but I just wouldn't say it's something that I've like set my sights on and I'm like gearing myself towards. I'm just like going with the flow.
We'll see how what happens.
Yeah. So that's that, and I also think that there are a lot of things that come with being a partner that I just don't
100%.
Yeah, I don't quite know if it's for me, but that's what I'm saying now in the position I'm in. I'm 2 years qualified, so who knows if that will change down the line. But right now, I don't really think so. Would I ever go in house? Probably not. I've done secondment, so obviously I did Lloyd's Banking Group.
Lloyd's, yeah.
And I did a secondment at HSBC. I don't know why I was about to say Santander, because I definitely didn't go there. So I've done client secondment, so I've got some experience of working in-house. I think I'm very first of all, I'm not good with change, to be honest. I'm a rubbish person to ask these questions, but I think I've become very much accustomed to the kind of like structure and operation of law firms and working in private practice, just the way that things are done there. And I don't get that same, I mean, obviously, you know, you get great work-life balance, for example, when you're when you're working in-house, or at least in general, it's better than private practice. But
that's the understanding, yeah.
I don't know. I just think, I think private practice is more for me. Again, if that changes, then it changes. But I kind of, and I also like the kind of, the exposure that you get to loads of different types of clients when you're working in private practice, whereas obviously when you're in-house, your client,
you're just focused on the business that you're working at. And
it doesn't mean that you're not doing like lots of different types of work, because I'm guessing that they, you know, they get asked,
they cover all the law stuff for that one business.
Exactly. But I like the diversity of the client base at my firm. I just like the way that things operate, you know. So I just right now I don't think that in-house is for me, but it could change. I don't know.
And that kind of ties in something that I definitely missed out, and ties in the question you just definitely had, because obviously you mentioned that it's generally considered that in-house you get better work-life balance. And obviously I know that you do some things outside of law. How do you kind of balance the two? Because a lot of people kind of get discouraged about going into corporate law and going to a big firm, because they're like, if I go to that firm, I'm working 12 hours a day, I have no life, I can't have a family, I can't do anything. How do you balance that in a whole different venture?
Okay, so I'm trying to think of the best way to start with that question. So obviously, in addition to doing law, I also do artist management, and I'm like fairly active on social media. Obviously, it's not a job, but it's something.
It is. Content creation takes time.
Yeah, that's true, but it's not a job for me anyway. It's not like I necessarily get paid for. So I think the starting point is that it depends on what firm you're at, because there are, you know, like you keep on talking about culture and stuff, but there are firms where it's accepted that the working culture is that you prioritize work over absolutely everything, and you're expected to do more hours per year. So the scope for having a life outside work, it's not that it's not there, but it's a bit less. And then also it's partly down to the team you're in as well, because once you get into the firm, you know, different firms have different working patterns. And I think being in like a regulatory advisory has definitely helped, in the sense that we have quite like a steady flow of work. So there are no like court deadlines or transaction deadlines that we absolutely work to. It's not that we don't have to do stuff, it's just not the same. So that has helped. One of the things that I remember in my first seat, the partner in the data protection team was saying to us that, because we were working quite a lot, obviously, in the run up to GDPR, and he was basically saying like, you guys are working loads, and to be honest, if you want to, you can work 24 hours a day and there will always be more work to do, but you have to like choose a cut-off point for yourself and be like, I am not doing any more than this. If you want to, then that's, you know, if you want to work 24 hours a day, then that's fine. But you also have to make, so after you've chosen the right firm and you're in the right team, that would allow you to, you know, have a life outside of work, it's then a personal choice of like how much, you know, want to manage your time, how much you want to dedicate to what you're doing at work and what you're doing outside. And I think that I'm always obviously trying to balance it, but I feel like I'm 2 years qualified, so I've reached a position where I feel comfortable with how I approach both of them. And I know how to level things off a bit, and when I need to give more time to one thing and another. So yeah, I think it's just like I don't know. I also don't sleep loads, but that's not because I'm always working really late. It's just because after work, I kind of like want to do stuff. So then, obviously, there's not that much time. Although I've calmed down a bit, so I don't go out as much as I used to. Like I used to be out on the weekends all the time, like evenings and stuff like that. I'm now obviously a bit older, so I have less energy for that. But yeah, I think work-life balance, after you are in the right environment, it's then like just a personal choice. Like how much do I care about making sure that I, separate my work and what I do outside of work, and like, not looking at my work phone on the weekends if possible. You have to like discipline yourself as well. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I really answered that, but that's
you definitely answered it. It was a great answer, and something I definitely want to pick up on what you said is like, picking the right law firm is one thing, but it's just as important to pick the right area of law if you do want to have extra time outside of work, because like you said, advisory, it's more, what's the word? It's not too up and down. It's not all over the place. Yeah. I feel like with transactional seats, like corporate M&A, especially if you're working in an international firm where you're dealing with different time zones and then there's lots of peaks, it can be harder for you to manage things outside. Or if you're doing litigation and you've got court deadlines that you're always rushing to, I think the area of law you pick also does dictate what your work pattern is like, because some law firms you can finish at 9 p.m. and then you'll have a couple of midnight finishes and then it's back to like 8 p.m. and then like, where some law firms, it may just be more 7 p.m.s constantly. So the area of law is just as important.
I'm just laughing at the person in the comments that says, "Excuse my enjoyment minister." I don't know.
Is my enjoyment? I can't like that. That's what I need to get you on, because the way you're doing commercial, you're just enjoying. I need to understand what the key is.
I just try to. I don't know. I just think I've always been like a fairly like social person, so it didn't ever occur to me that like you can't do that whilst you're working. Kind of, you just find places.
It's part of life.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And there's always something to do. So I don't know, if you have a quiet day, then I'm like, right, what are my friends doing? I haven't seen them in a while. Let me go and visit. There's just, and then obviously you get holiday as well. You get time off. It's not that you're at your desk, 365. So yeah, exactly. There are gaps for it.
This is just a really quick question: how to determine what skills the firm is looking for? I think you mentioned, you can go online and type, skills for a commercial lawyer or a lawyer. But I think it's also really important to look at what skills are outlined on the graduate recruitment website of that firm. Because, for example, at Linklaters, they have literally a diagram of 4 boxes, and each of those boxes contains the different skills they're looking for in the application process. And similarly, like Shoesmiths, they have like a certain amount, and lots of firms will say what they're looking for. And so say, for example, just touching this quickly, say, for example, the firm talks about critical thinking, teamwork, and attention to detail, and you talk about communication, commercial awareness, and something else in your application form. They are important skills, they're valid skills, but then you're not ticking off the box of the skills that they're going to be looking for throughout the application process. So I think understand what skills you need generally for a lawyer, but then also understand what skills each law firm that you're applying to place the most emphasis on, should I say. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, nothing to add. I think that was a great answer. Okay. What I would have said.
Okay, good. A person said, would you recommend Hogan Lovells?
Yes. Yeah, I would. I mean, okay, no, actually, I can't say that because obviously it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
But in terms of like my own experience, I personally, part of the reason why when people are like, oh, would you ever go and work here, or like, would you go and leave here? And I'm just like, no, because I'm actually really enjoying myself here. And like I said, I'm not good with change, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that I've found somewhere where I really feel like I fit. And I can be myself as much as possible in the corporate space, and just not feel like I hate work. I know I probably don't give off that impression sometimes with the way that I speak, but but yeah, I definitely don't like hate my job, and it is a stressful job. Do you know what I mean? So the people here are really, really nice. I know all firms say that, like, oh, we're super friendly, but we actually have a reputation for being a friendly firm, and I think since joining, I'm like, I get why that is the case. Sorry, I'm just trying to think, am I the only person who's here? Sorry, because someone's knocking on the door. Oh my God, okay, wait.
Okay, the door's gone.
2 secs, yes. Speak
about
something, maybe answer another question, and I'll
I'll answer another question. Okay. Another question then is, someone said, could you please repeat the platforms to tailor the application? So yeah, I would say, if one way you're tailoring, or one way that you are picking your law firms is because of their practice area. So say, for example, when I was really interested in real estate, I picked firms that had a good area or good department in real estate. So platforms for that, you could use Legal 500 or Chambers UK. So they are good at ranking law firms based on their practice area. Then you have websites like Lex 100, Roll on Friday, that really kind of give you the nitty gritty about like what are current trainees or what are current lawyers at the firm saying about the firm and what are their experiences. Then you have, if you want to actually do your research on the firm's platforms, you want to check their website, you want to check their LinkedIn. A lot of firms have now jumped on social media in terms of like Instagram. So if you can, you might want to follow that page because they tend to release in real time, like when application stuff opens or when they have open days or when they have like virtual lives or networking events. So Instagram, LinkedIn, and their website. And then I think that was it. Yeah, Legal 500, Chambers Student or Chambers UK, Lex 100, Roll on Friday, website, LinkedIn, Instagram. Anything else in terms of researching firms? Oh, and then commercial awareness on research. So say, for example, if the firm has asked you to talk about a commercial news story or talk about a deal that they've done, you want to use things like Lawyer to Be. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, Lawyer to Be and The Lawyer and The Economist. So if you're a student, you should have access to those platforms via your student platform. Because if you go on it just randomly on Google, their subscription is like £500 a year. It's ridiculous. So yeah, those were the resources. I hope that's helpful. Okay, another question. Okay, I've got quite a few questions on rejection. So generally, did you ever experience rejection? And if you did, how did you overcome that feeling of rejection?
Yeah, I got a lot of rejections during the whole application process. I call it process. Yeah. It wasn't just one firm, obviously lots of firms. I can't really remember dwelling on them that much, like that. I think by the time that I reached the stage where I felt like, okay, I'm good at doing these applications, I was more successful. Whereas when I was applying at a stage where I myself thought, these applications actually aren't great and I'm just trying my luck and I'm trying to apply for loads of firms and it's not working, I didn't even really feel like I necessarily deserved to be successful at that stage. So maybe I just wasn't that thrown by it. But I think once I'd like built up the confidence and built up the knowledge to have successful applications under my belt, it was just happening. So yeah. But I would say obviously try and take account of all of the feedback that you get when you get rejections. I know not all firms give feedback, but some of them do. And it's not just something that they're saying. Well, at least I know from the perspective of my firm, they actually give you like honest feedback. So make sure that you act on that so that the next application that you do is better than the one that you did before it, because there's no point in receiving feedback and just being like, oh, okay, that's interesting, and then not actually doing something to change
implementing
your
it.
next set of applications based on what you were told. So yeah, but not to let it get you down, because to be honest, I don't know that many people who had like a clear run in terms of like, first application was successful. It's normal for people to be rejected, especially from these jobs when you get thousands of people applying for a few positions.
Yeah, it's so competitive, definitely.
So it's not just you, and just like don't let it make you stop applying. And I did like multiple rounds of applications before I started to become successful in them. So just don't stop. If you need to like take a break and like rethink, relook at your applications, what you might be doing wrong, for example, then I'm all for that. But just don't let it knock you out of the game completely, because you never know how close you are to that one successful application that then gets you the training contract that you wanted. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Agreed. Yeah, I applied for training contract. I think I did 5 rounds of application. Yeah, it's not the goal, but that's just how it works out.
Yeah.
Pardon. I think my advice in terms of rejections would depend on where you were rejected, I guess. I think, like you said, feedback is so, so important. I think the first few times I was rejected, I'm not even going to mention the first, but the first time I was rejected, I really loved them because by that time I'd got past the application form. I had done the telephone interview. I had done the assessments. And so I was like, I'm invested now. You can't knock me down now.
Yeah.
But the feedback, I can't tell you what the feedback was, because in the moment I was so emotional about not getting it. I didn't write down the feedback, which means
you said I loved them.
Literally, I was like, no, like don't tell me no. So I zoned out for every minute after that statement. So I think definitely when you get feedback, write it down, and like I said, make sure you implement it. If it's a case where you didn't finish the writing assessment, then practice, you know, setting out your time before the writing assessment so that you're hitting the time when you're in there, you're not losing time. Just make sure you're applying the feedback. If you're actually getting rejected from the application stage, then there's a number of things you need to do. Did you apply late? So did you apply the day before, the week of the application deadline? And that is particularly important if the law firm has a rolling application process, because if it's rolling, then they would have started giving the places away by the time you applied, in which case you're applying for even fewer positions than they had originally. Are you getting someone to spell and grammar check your application form? Because your application content could be good, but if there's one too many errors, they may just bin it. Are you doing enough research? Could your application be copy and pasted to another firm? I think, yeah. And once you're honest with yourself about what you did wrong, processing that rejection, like you said, is easier, because it's like, okay, I didn't do good enough. If I do these things better, I'll get it next time. And you can kind of just keep going.
Agreed.
So yeah, I think we're going to do one more question, guys, and then we're going to have to call it a night, because yeah, we've definitely run over. But I really, really appreciate everyone who's still in the live and who sent their questions in. I've noted the type of questions that you have, so feel free to follow me if you aren't already, and I'll try and put posts up answering some things if we don't get to cover it. So final question. Okay, if you were to do things again, what would you do differently, if anything? Great way to round it off.
The reason I find that question difficult is because I feel like everything that I did do has obviously led me
got you to this stage, 100%.
I mean, if my journey was to be more ideal, I obviously wouldn't have spent, for example, 2 years doing economics that I obviously sucked at. I wouldn't say that I wasted time, because even though I did graduate late, I got something from the experience. But yeah, if I were to say, you know, could I have had a smoother journey into the legal profession? I most definitely could have. I think if I was a bit more focused when I was picking my uni choices about where I eventually wanted to end up. But it just comes back to me saying that I plan things on a, like, you know, where do I want to be next month kind of basis, and I'm not really long term. So yeah, that might be the only thing that I would necessarily have done differently, because I think in general, even though things were not like completely smooth, I'm just quite happy with how they turned out. And I also don't see the benefit of being like, oh, I wish I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, things are fine, so that's fine. So yeah, there's nothing that I really wish that I would have done differently. And like I say, I'm really happy at the firm that I've ended up at as well. So I have no regrets about where my, you know, research in different firms took me, because I feel great about where I currently am. So yeah, nothing that I necessarily would have done differently, except that at that stage where I was making decisions about what route did I want to take academically, I would have given more thought to what my actual skills were. I know now it's much more flexible in terms of the fact that you can study more or less anything and end up being a lawyer, so it was fine. I didn't even have the like academic capability to complete that degree, so it wasn't even like, oh, just do it and then do it.
You should have done it and then done the GDR or something after.
Yeah, I could have done without that, because obviously uni is not free, so I still have to pay for those years I spent. So that's the only thing that I would change, but otherwise I'm really happy with my journey and how everything has kind of turned out. So yeah, I don't want to sound like everything's super positive, but there's not very much that I would delete from the journey. I think it's all important. So yeah.
No, I agree. And I think when I was going through the journey, at some points it felt like the worst thing ever. Like, I honestly got well over 100 application rejections.
Yeah.
And the year after year kind of doubt was heavy. I think, as you said though, getting to the stage where I am now, I'm about to start at a great firm. Life has kind of worked out. Yeah. I'm more passionate now than ever about helping other aspiring solicitors, and I wouldn't have that passion if my journey was smoother. I wouldn't be sharing information if I kind of just knew things immediately and thought that everyone just kind of knew it as well. But I would have to say that if I was doing it again, maybe things that, so for example, my brother is deciding to go into law. So there's things that I'm telling him to do so that he doesn't make the mistakes that I've made. So from that angle, I'm like, okay, prioritize your academics. Like I said, I don't have a perfect academic history. So I'm not saying if you don't get great academics, you can't make it. I'm just saying if you do get good academics, then it makes your journey easier. So don't take on more than you can handle. If you're taking on too much, then let something go, focus, and pick it back up later. Second thing I would say is network early. I was networking early, but because I didn't have a clear focus on commercial law, most of my networking was more criminal or human rights. So I didn't have a really good understanding about what commercial firms were looking for, what commercial lawyers were doing. So I think networking is really important. And finally, I would say record and action feedback. So like I said, I can't remember what my feedback was, which obviously didn't help the next time round. So don't do that. Pardon?
I said, because you love them so much. You were like,
honestly, I was like, nah, after you rejected me, I actually don't want to hear anything else. So action feedback, because that way you don't waste time. Because, for example, I knew from university that everyone needs commercial awareness, but I actually didn't start to put it into proper action until 2020. So that's 5 years, guys, 5 years. So yeah, when you know what you need to do, just do it. Like, even though you may be, you know, shy to ask someone to read your application form, get them to do it, because then they can check for errors. Like, don't ignore it because you're too shy or
Yeah, and even like things like mock interviews, to be honest, because I've done a couple of mock interviews up here. I don't know if it's sensible to say that because it's obviously people will laugh, but I've done a couple of mock interviews with people, and they always say it just makes such a difference to have a try at doing it before you obviously go into the real thing. It changes the way that you think about how to approach questions in interviews, for example. So all the help that you can get from the people around you, like, definitely use them for that. And everyone has, you know, a friend who is kind of switched on enough to be able to read your application and say, actually, I think that you should change this, or, you know, that kind of thing. So just use the resources around you as well. I think maybe that's the only thing that I would say after listening to you, that I might have done a little bit more of. Because I think, you know, when you just think that I wouldn't say I thought that I knew everything, but I just didn't think that I could really use people around me. Whereas actually now I probably could have a lot more than I actually did. So
and even if it's not friends and family, like, if you're still studying and you're still in education, the career service is there, and I feel like I never used it. So they're there to read applications, to look over your CV, your cover letter. They organize mock interviews. So use your career service, like, tap into it and see what they offer, because it can only be a plus, right?
Great.
But thank you so much, Nikki, because I literally told Nikki, okay, it's gonna be about 40 minutes, and it's now been an hour and 18.
It's fine.
I appreciate your patience. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, everyone that's still in the live, sent in their questions. We appreciate it. If people have any questions for you, I know you said you're not active on LinkedIn, but is there anywhere else people can reach you?
Yeah, to be honest, just like Instagram, Twitter. I'm like usually very responsive. I wouldn't say very responsive in the sense of quick, but I will always actually reply, as long as it's not like, you know, just trolling or whatever. But yeah, just no LinkedIn, because it's just so much happening over there. But yeah, if you message me on Twitter or Instagram, I will reply. My username on Twitter is the same as here. Actually, no, I have a new Twitter page which is called Law with Nikki, so Law with Nikki.
Okay.
Kind of like compartmentalize, even though today I was like, I can't be bothered to do that anymore. But yeah, I have a separate Twitter for like law stuff. But to be honest, either one, you can contact me there or on Instagram, and I will always make an effort to reply to you. Just anything but LinkedIn is perfect for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. And yes, this live will be saved, so you can refer back to it. It's going on my YouTube. That's all right?
Yeah.
I feel like I always do this. I leave it till the end to check that it's okay.
No, you checked with me before. You asked me before.
Okay. Phew. Okay. So it will come off my Instagram, and it will go up my YouTube. What day is it today? Tuesday. By the end of the week. So I'll put another notification up on my Instagram when it's up, and then you can just watch it again. But yeah, have a good night, have a good night, everyone, and thank you again, Nikki.
That's okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.